Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid tonight. Excuse me, Grid Live. It's not exactly tonight since it is morning in the East Coast. We're about 12:30 a.m. East Coast, 9:30 Pacific, 8:30 Alaska time. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Sandiego, and thank you for watching. We're very excited to have you join us. Be sure to leave a comment in the chat room. We'll love to read some of your comments, some of your thoughts and opinions about the race. Definitely was going to be one of those races where we knew a lot of going into it, as well a lot of questions as well. It's the Coca-Cola 600. Of course, it is the longest race of the season. We've seen a lot of times in the past where surprise winners come out of it, a lot of sometimes big wrecks too, but it seemed like today, especially if you had that clean air, you were up front and you were really hard to pass. And then, of course, we'll get to the heartbreak that is the Chase Elliott story. But let's review quickly the grid ranking. Of course, in the grid ranking, only NASCAR has been run, so we'll focus on where some of the NASCAR drivers are. Kevin Harvick still third in the grid ranking with 17.81. He is behind Jamie Whincup and Scott McLaughlin, the top two, both of them from the Virgin Australia Supercar Series. Denny Hamlin dropped to sixth with a 14.77. Kyle Busch is still in the top 10 with a 13.25. Joey Logano's in 10th place with 12.59. And Brad Keselowski, with his win, he is now in the grid ranking. He has 11.51, and he is 12th in the grid ranking. Be sure to follow the grid ranking on Twitter. You can follow it at Grid Rating, as well as our website, gridranking.com. Later on, we're hoping to get some of the updated numbers from the Grid World Motorsports League as well. So now let's get into the Coca-Cola 600. And for anyone watching, please feel free to comment with any thoughts you have, some surprises and whatnot, as we'll go through the Coca-Cola 600. Pretty much opening ceremonies, we knew it was going to be a little bit different. You didn't have the crowd there as we do in the past years, but I felt Fox did a really good job. They had all the same pageantry we saw, from the bagpipes playing Amazing Grace, taps, national anthem, and then, of course, even halfway through the race, they did do the 30-second moment of silence, which I thought was really fitting. So even though there was no crowd there, it's been a surreal Memorial Day, considering we had no Indianapolis 500, no Monaco Grand Prix. He did a really good job putting together a good piece, especially featuring some of the fallen soldiers in the race that had their names on the windshield. One of the more bizarre incidents that occurred, and it started right before the race started, and we'll love to hear people's comments about this, was Denny Hamlin and that ballast falling out. As you all saw, the ballast is there to make sure the car meets minimum weight. A good chunk of that fell off of the race car before the race even started. You even saw the NASCAR officials struggling to pick it up. One of the things that, of course, makes it really interesting is where this has to be replaced, because if you don't, you have an underweight car, and that could give Denny Hamlin an advantage. Denny Hamlin came to pit road before the race started, but the race started while he was still on the pit, and it was a lengthy pit stop for him. By the time he came back on the racetrack, he was 8 laps down, and he's pretty much stayed in the bottom half of the field, and with about 9 laps down. So it wasn't a good race at all for him. A lot of talk was earlier. He had some momentum. He had won in Darlington, Daytona. Could he win at Charlotte? The answer was no, because of that weird and bizarre turn of events before the race even started. Now, one of the big things, the first caution was on lap 20. Lap 20 was a competition caution, since there was limited practice, limited time trials as well too. So it's one of those things where we're seeing what's going to happen. And one of the things we noticed, tires were not falling off like we saw the last week at Darlington. Over in Darlington, we saw tires were a big drop-off after so few laps, where here they had run 20 laps and there wasn't that much of a drop-off. That'll become an issue later into the race. Tomcat NASCAR 2 makes a comment, and he said, I do wonder if accelerated race day schedule contributed to Hamlin's team failing to secure the ballast. That is a really good point indeed that you bring up. This was a really unique situation where we didn't just have a random draw of where everyone was starting, but instead we had a quick session of practice, qualifying, and then the race. Brad Keselowski was even sent back to the start for unapproved adjustments post-qualifying. So after that first caution for essentially allowing teams to check the tire wear, the competition caution. We went back to green, but then lap 49, the rain showed up. This turned into a 1 hour and 8-minute rain delay. I know this was something, it seems to be the pattern throughout the NASCAR season is rain delays. I know it was something where this is the longest race of the year, so this really meant it was going to be pushed back to even later finish. And we still were early on in the race. We didn't know if we were going to have a lot of cautions or if this was going to be a really quick race. After that hour-long delay, finally, we did get some racing again. Kurt Busch had been leading most of the way, but then off strategy, Alex Bowman then picked up the lead. And Alex looked really good, but this is where we really start to see clean air for the leader was really a huge advantage. If you didn't have the clean air, you were not going to be that successful trying to make a pass for the lead. Very few cars were strong enough to make passes for the lead, especially in long runs we saw. But essentially, with 3 laps to go in stage 1, we had another yellow flag, the third caution of the day. That was because Clint Bowyer had a part broke. It sounded like a control broken rocker arm had failed on the 14 Ford Mustang, and he hit the wall really hard and was done for the day. So tough luck for Clint Bowyer, especially for his fans that were cheering for him. This meant the stage did end under yellow, since stages can end under yellow, and Alex Bowman did win the stage. After pit stops again, Bowman still had the lead, and pretty much we went all of stage 2 caution-free. Bowman won stage 2. The only time he did not lead the stage was during the pit stop cycle. And even then, we saw drivers try to short pit to see if they could gain an advantage on Bowman, but Bowman extended his lead during the pit stops in stage 2. So with stage 2 being caution-free, a lot of folks were looking at this could be a quick race. Let's see what happens when we come to the third stage. And the third stage started to look about the same until we had another caution. The 5th caution of the day on lap 277 when Matt Kenseth hit the wall. Matt Kenseth started really well today. It looked like he might have a good finish, but then he had a speeding penalty that put him 2 laps behind. Being 2 laps behind, and with so many cars 1 lap down, it was really hard for him to be in position to get the lucky dog. And along with the lack of yellow flags, we had a lot of long runs throughout the stages. You didn't see a lot of opportunities for teams to pit, hope for a yellow quickly, and then make up a lap. After that, essentially, is when we saw the pit stops, and then we saw Truex really come and challenge Bowman. Truex and Bowman battled it hard for the lead, and then essentially that's when we saw pit strategy again become an issue when we saw another caution. This time it was Joey Gase spinning up, setting up for green. Essentially, yellow flag pit stopped right before the end of the third stage. This is where we saw a lot of strategy, and especially we had mentioned that tires were not seeing a big drop-off after a portion of a run. We saw teams elect to do 2 tires, and we even saw several teams decide no tires. One of those drivers was Joey Logano. Joey Logano risked with no tires, and he was able to hold off and win the third stage of the Coca-Cola 600. So this was really interesting because unlike other NASCAR races that have only 3 stages, the Coca-Cola 600 has 4 stages. Each stage is 100 laps. It felt like this sort of made it a little harder for teams, especially since clean air was such a big issue, to do anything strategy-wise creatively to win. The only way they could really try to use strategy to get ahead was to see if they could short pit, but a lot of times we were seeing that was not becoming an effective manner of trying to jump ahead. We saw some teams try to pit before the leader, but once the leader got in, it was just game over. It seemed that each stage, the running order, unless a yellow came out, that's how it's going to end after the restart. So maybe this could be something NASCAR may want to evaluate if they do look into adjusting the stages or something for the Coca-Cola 600. So with stage 3 over, the 4th stage, of course, was going to come up. And the 4th stage essentially was a pretty good amount of racing that we saw. One of the interesting strategy calls, Matthew De Benedetto from the 21 team, the Wood brothers, took 2 tires. And for a while, he was holding onto the lead. He was looking pretty good. Then we had a caution flag come out. And then Jimmy Johnson inherited the lead. And this is where it gets really interesting. Of course, a lot of folks are wondering, can Jimmy Johnson win his 5th Coca-Cola 600 today? Coming to the restart, he had a situation where they went with the outside for the restart, inside with Brad Keselowski. When it came to the restart, it wasn't that great of a restart, as Brad Keselowski was able to stay with Jimmy Johnson throughout the entire lap and then essentially take the lead. Jimmy Johnson was stuck behind Keselowski, and essentially that was going to look like might be the run order until here comes a fast Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott puts himself for a win. He was looking really good. We saw how Brad Keselowski was very aggressive in the backstretch, trying to break the drive, going all the way down towards the bottom blue and white line instead of the yellow line, trying to break that drive, but still Chase Elliott kept catching up, and Chase Elliott did take the lead. And it looked like Chase Elliott was going to be the man to get the win today. Because unless a yellow flag came out, strategy was not going to be an issue to ruin the race. So it really looked like it was going to happen. I know, especially after what happened on Wednesday, being spun by Kyle Busch, having that second place potential win from Darlington taken away, it looked like we're going to hear the siren at the Dawsonville ballroom playing. But with 2 laps to go, bad luck for Chase Elliott, golden opportunity for everybody else. The yellow flag comes out after William Byron, Chase Elliott's teammate, has a tire blow, spins, brings out the yellow flag. And this is just something where we've seen whatever the leader does, there's going to be several cars that are going to do the opposite to try to get the win. Had Chase Elliott stayed out, you probably would have seen Keselowski, Johnson, 3 or 4 other cars pit. You'll see a few cars stay out. It's just one of those deals where if he had stayed out, maybe he could have gotten a win, but maybe somebody was going to come make a pit stop, or worse, nobody stops behind. Nobody stays out with Chase Elliott. But Chase Elliott decided to make the pit stop, get 4 fresh tires, and of course with that, 8 other cars all stayed out. In the green, white checker flag, there's always the potential that you're going to see multiple attempts as caution flags come out before that white flag. For any fans, especially since we're so late, that are still new to NASCAR or not familiar compared to other forms of racing, in NASCAR, they have a green, white checker flag overtime rule. With this rule, they allow multiple attempts to finish the race under green flag. The one exception is if the race takes the white flag, the leader has taken the white flag, the next flag ends it, whether it's the checker flag or the yellow flag. When the leaders took the green flag, we essentially saw Keselowski manage to keep the lead. Johnson was on the outside, couldn't really pose much of a threat. It got really crazy behind it as Bowman, a bunch of other cars were making contact all over the track. And it was one of those deals where we saw essentially, again, clean air was just too dominant, made it too hard to pass, and Brad Keselowski took the win. Chase Elliott, after making that pit stop, did come all the way up to 3rd place. One of the things that was really interesting, after the race, Mike Joy did say, had there been another restart, would have been a different story because Chase Elliott was in 3rd place. One of the things you got to look at, of course, Chase Elliott got 3rd place during the last lap. So it's still, who knows what could have happened had that yellow flag never shown up. Probably Chase Elliott would have taken the win. Had something happened during the green, white checker flag race, we could have seen possibly Chase Elliott gain more position, but it may have still been a Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson battle for the win. So the Coca-Cola 600 is now in the books. Brad Keselowski is now a winner for 2020. He is now in the playoffs as well. And this means Roger Penske now has both of his drivers, 2 out of the 3, with wins. Now, of course, as we mentioned, this definitely affects the grid ranking because now Brad Keselowski finds himself in the grid ranking. He is 12th place. The next race is going to be the Charlotte 500K Wednesday event. There's going to be no practice, no qualifying. It's going to be essentially the same style as what we saw in Darlington. And one of the things I think a lot of folks are going to be looking looking at is possibly setting up the cars very differently than a Coca-Cola 600. The Coca-Cola 600 is a long 600-mile race. We're only doing 500K. So you're going to probably be seeing more setups for shorter runs. It's going to be nighttime. So you're going to probably see more setups, not for a transition from day to night, but just for the nighttime. So it's going to be a really interesting race to see what happens at Charlotte this Wednesday. Now, folks, definitely I encourage you, please follow Grid Rankin. You can follow us at gridrankin.com, as well as Twitter at GridRating, and of course, Grid_WML. That's the Grid World Motorsport League. It'll be updating shortly as well. The Grid Rankin has been updated, and we're looking forward to what should be a good Wednesday night of racing. It'll be really interesting to see if some teams try to do something different, especially with the fact that we're seeing how clean air and tire wear is not that big of an issue. We may even see Goodyear introduce another tire that might increase tire wear to make a little bit more strategy of an option. All right, folks, I know we're approaching the 1 o'clock a.m. hour in the East Coast. We're approaching the 10 o'clock hour here in the West Coast. I want to thank everyone for watching today. Be sure to follow us online, keep in touch, and definitely we'll see you next time, Wednesday, right here for our special Grid Tonight. It's going to be about 30 minutes before the race start time. Kobe will be back from the podium finish. We'll do pick a winner again. We do have a pick a winner from Twitter. We'll definitely be giving him a shout out. And then, of course, next week we'll also start our pick a winner standings, and we encourage everyone to participate, see how many people could get in, and see if we could have a champion. My name is Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.